This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Fire and ice. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. We'll start with the fire.
This is going to likely be the most destructive fire in state history.
Multiple wildfires burning out of control in Southern California.
In all of my years covering wildfires, I have never seen anything quite like this.
Correspondent Tom Waite has the scene from the Pacific Palisades.
There's just a ton of embers and debris falling now. It's unbelievable what we're seeing. I can't even describe it. It's so intense.
Hurricane force Santa Ana winds fanning these flames. NBC's Liz Kreitz.
I've never seen anything like what's happening in LA right now. Multiple businesses and homes have been destroyed. Beachfront properties up in flames. Home after home engulfed.
Reporter Nicole Comstock says a nursing home had to be evacuated overnight.
The city of Pasadena is doing everything they can to help all of these people who've had to evacuate these senior centers in Altadena. Right now, they're actually loading people up in a Pasadena SWAT vehicle.
KNX Radio's Peter Demetrio has more from Malibu.
These are beach homes, beach properties over a stretch of perhaps 1.5 miles to almost 2 miles. By my count, somewhere between 50 and maybe 80 of those homes were totally destroyed.
Millions across Southern California under red flag warnings today. The governor's declared a state of emergency. On the eastern half of the country, it's an altogether different scene with snow and ice in the forecast. The Weather Channel's John Erdman.
So, how much snow could you see? Well, Little Rock, Arkansas, you could see as much as 5 to 8 inches of snow, 3 to 5 inches in Nashville, and even some deep south cities like Dallas, Atlanta, and Raleigh could pick up 1 to 3 inches of snow.
Folks in the Family Life listening area seeing the coldest air they've seen in over a year today. For many, daytime highs won't make it out of the teens.
Oh man, it's really cold. It's windy and there's a lot of ice.
Heating pants, heating shirt, heating gloves.
It's freezing. Look, right now is not the time for anybody to be outside. It's freezing. If you can stay inside, stay inside.
Experts say it doesn't take long for frostbite to set in on exposed skin in conditions like this. The U.S. House has passed the Laken-Riley Act. It's the first piece of legislation approved in the new Republican-led Congress. Reporter Mark Mayfield.
The strict border measure is named for the 22-year-old Georgia student who was killed last year by an immigrant in the country illegally. It became a flashpoint in the 2024 presidential campaign. The vote to pass the act now puts pressure on Senate Democrats to support it when Republicans bring it to the floor on Friday. I'm Mark Mayfield.
The Laken-Riley Act mandates federal officials detain illegal immigrants with criminal records. It also allows states to sue the federal government for failing to enforce immigration law. President-elect Trump says he won't rule out seizing control of the Panama Canal or Greenland, which he calls strategic national security interests. Nate Foy has our report.
Donald Trump Jr. and several Trump representatives landed in Greenland for what's being called a personal visit as Trump pushes to purchase the country. The president-elect threatened to use economic force rather than military force to facilitate a possible merger with Canada as well.
The president also vows, or president-elect I should say, also vows to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, adding that it has a beautiful ring to it. A Christian advocate for the state of Israel says the Middle East will be changing as soon as Trump takes office.
Arab countries in the Middle East that are looking to actually do good for their people, they're going to benefit. And maybe even a change in regime in Iran.
Matthew Faraci says Trump's call for Hamas to release its hostages parallels 1981, when Iranian militants held American hostages. They were released the very day that Ronald Reagan took office.
The reason that Iran released the hostages is because they knew that Ronald Reagan was serious. that threat was going to follow through.
It's not known how many of the hostages taken in the October 7th terror attack are still alive. Trump's demanding their release before January 20th. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley accuses President Biden of trying to sabotage the Trump presidency by cutting off ocean water to offshore oil drilling.
This is the last gasp of a dying liberalism. Listen, Biden has been trying to sabotage the country for the last 4 years, opening our our borders, shutting down our oil and natural gas. So, of course, he's doing this on the way out. The good news is that help is on the way.
President-elect Trump's vowed to overturn the offshore drilling ban that the president signed this week. That Biden ban prohibits drilling in 625 million acres of ocean water on both the east and west coasts. Long lines of well-wishers are filing past the flag-draped casket today of America's 39th president. Vice President Kamala Harris says of the late Jimmy Carter,
"He served the people, and he left the world better than he found it."
Carter will lie in state at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda until his state funeral tomorrow at the National Cathedral. All 5 living U.S. presidents will be there. Still to come on the Noon Report, a midweek edition. It's back to business in Albany. Penn State football and what killed the school janitor.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. The wintry weather continues. We've got cold and some flakes in our future. Forecast details coming up.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. Let's check the stories making news where you live, all across New York and Pennsylvania. Starting May 7th, you'll need Real ID if you want to fly anywhere. It's a security upgrade on your driver's license. Monroe County, New York clerk Jamie Romeo.
We don't want to put our friends at the airport or the TSA or anyone in a position where May 7th is going to come. You don't have what you need and you're not able to get onto that plane.
The deadline again, May the 7th. It'll cost you about $65 for Real ID. That's about the same as it would if you were renewing your driver's license. Andy Moore is director of the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport.
Anyone age 18 and older will have to have a Real ID or an enhanced ID in order to travel domestically.
For more information about how you can update your driver's license so you have Real ID, you're urged to contact your county DMV office. Today marks the start of the 2025 legislative session in Albany. New York state lawmakers expected to act on bills on everything from mental illness to climate change to school funding. Governor Hochul's State of the State speech set for next Tuesday. She'll talk a lot then about how to make New York more affordable.
We want to give everybody that lift up that they need, especially in those early tough years. We want to support our families, not make them feel they have to leave our state because everything was so expensive from housing to childcare.
The 6-month legislative session lasts through the middle part of June. Pennsylvania politicians were sworn in yesterday for the 209th legislative session. ABC 27's Dennis Owens has a recap.
Do you solemnly swear?
202 in the State House sworn in. Democrat Joanna McClinton, Republican Jesse Topper were the speaker candidates. The first vote, partisan and predictable.
The Honorable Joanna McClinton received 101 votes. The Honorable Jesse Topper received 101 votes.
A tie that Topper untied moments later.
I rise to withdraw my name from consideration.
Topper bows out. McClinton once again speaker. Democrats applaud the selflessness.
You're a good man, Mr. Topper, and I thank you.
Both leaders called for bipartisanship, and most everyone realizes the math requires it.
We're 101 and we're 101. Thus, we must work together.
The Senate also sworn in, less drama, 28-22 Republican Kim Ward, President pro tem, also stressing unity.
It's very divisive to suggest a divided government can't get things done.
That report from ABC 27's Dennis Owens in Harrisburg. A man found dead yesterday at a charter school in Syracuse. That school remains closed today while an investigation continues. The janitor was discovered in the school cafeteria. A carbon monoxide leak was found at the time, but officials do not think that is what caused the janitor's death. A driver injured yesterday in western Pennsylvania when his garbage truck crashed into the side of a bank. Say what? Here's Family Life's Brian Query.
Investigators say the incident happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, just before the bank opened at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Witnesses say it was quite a scary scene as the garbage truck apparently lost control going down a steep hill, crossing a road, and then traveling down an embankment before crashing into the side of a credit union. Authorities say the driver was taken to a local hospital to get checked out. According to a bank official, there were approximately 40 people inside at the time of the crash. Fortunately, no other injuries were reported, and the bank is closed until further notice while the incident remains under investigation. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Bad weather was to blame for a school bus crash yesterday in Yates County, New York. The Penn Yan School District says the full-size bus went off the road and into a ditch in the town of Potter. It hit several trees before coming to a stop in a field. Thankfully, the driver nor any of the 3 children on board were injured. Police want you to know about New York's new Forfeit in 4 law. It revokes the driver's license of anybody caught driving under the influence 4 times. Previously, it took 5 offenses for a driver's license to be revoked. Chautauqua County Sheriff James Quattrone says repeat DUIs are a real danger.
Any amount of impaired driving is too much. Anything we can do to crack down on the repeat offenders. Unfortunately, too many people are repeat offenders, and they're often those who are causing the crashes that are out there.
Many in law enforcement point out that drugged driving is just as dangerous as drunk driving, and now with recreational marijuana legal in New York, police are worried about an increase in car crashes. Pennsylvania's junior U.S. Senator Dave McCormick is opening up 7 regional offices across the Commonwealth. The Republican says it's meant to demonstrate that he will be responsive to the needs of Pennsylvanians. McCormick beat longtime Democrat Bob Casey Jr. in the November election. While the body of the late President Jimmy Carter lies in state at the U.S. Capitol, a remembrance ceremony of another past president happened yesterday at the Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo. That ceremony marked a milestone for Forest Lawn's most famous resident.
The 225th anniversary of the birth of Buffalo's own Millard Fillmore, who went on to become the 13th president of the United States.
Fillmore was president from 1850 to 1853. Forest Lawn CEO Julie Snyder tells WGRZ,
"We're very honored to be one of 40 cemeteries across the country to have a home for this past president."
A total of 5 U.S. presidents were born in New York: Millard Fillmore, Martin Van Buren, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and Donald Trump. The Penn State Nittany Lions will take on the Fightin' Irish of Notre Dame tomorrow night in the Orange Bowl. The winner advances to college football's championship game. A busload of Penn State fans headed south for Miami yesterday from Lackawanna County. They're looking for some fun, some sun, and come tomorrow, some football.
Sunshine, tan, a win.
Can you pull that off in 4 days?
Yes, we can. We have our golf clubs. We're ready.
There were some Notre Dame fans on that bus, however, but this Nittany Lion diehard tells WNEP they'll go home disappointed.
Well, they're going to be sad. They're going to be sad. That's all it is. I can't help it.
No matter who wins, should be a great game. The Orange Bowl kicks off tomorrow night at 7:30 on ESPN. We've got more sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on Family Life.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the Rangers were feeling pretty good, up 3 goals against the Stars, less than 12 minutes into the contest. But Dallas came back with 2 goals of their own in that first period. Then they evened things up in the second. New York grabbed a 4-3 lead in the third, but the Stars evened it up again and then won it in overtime against the Blue Shirts. Alexis Lafreniere and Vincent Trocheck both scored a pair of goals for New York. Travis Konechny lit the lamp twice, but nobody else on the Flyers could find the back of the net, and Philly fell to Toronto 3-2, the Maple Leafs sweeping the home-and-home series. The Penguins went to a shootout against the Blue Jackets. It should have never gone that far, and it was the Jackets who came out on top 4-3. The Pens had a 2-goal lead with 8 minutes left in regulation, so they're reeling just a bit from that loss. Rickard Rakell had 2 goals for Pittsburgh. Elsewhere on the ice, your winners, the Wild, Jets, Oilers, Red Wings, Lightning, Flames, and Golden Knights. On the hardwood, it was a finish a player only dreams of. The Jazz knocked down a 3-point shot with 3 seconds to play to tie the game. The home crowd went nuts, but then Trae Young, from beyond half court, threw up a shot that got nothing but net. The Hawks beat the Jazz 124-121, and the crowd got very quiet. Houston, Charlotte, Dallas, the T-Wolves, Heat, and Celtics also victorious. Baseball news, Justin Verlander has signed with the Giants. And in men's college hoops, number 1 Tennessee, undefeated Tennessee, got blown out by Florida 73-43. So much for the undefeated season. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, man, thank you kindly. And still to come on the Noon Report, L.A. on fire, snow and ice in the south. And do you believe in miracles? More of us do. We'll have that next.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. According to a recent report from statistician Ryan Burge, the belief in miracles has risen in recent years among the college-educated. That's the group that's been most correlated with materialistic beliefs. In 1991, just 45% of Americans with a bachelor's degree said that they, quote, definitely believe in miracles. But according to the U.S. government's General Social Survey, that number had climbed to 63% by 2018. And the change was even more dramatic among those with graduate-level degrees. In 1991, just 30% of those with at least a master's degree believed in miracles. By 2018, that number jumped to 61%. Apparently, education is just not the desupernaturalizing influence that it once was. In fact, those with higher education are now as likely to believe in miracles as those without higher education. However, these surprising numbers are part of a larger story about Western secular society. You see, the standard prediction about the West was that the growth and the expansion of technology and other things would continue to make us more secular, and that more secular means less belief in God and less belief in the supernatural. However, the percentage of atheists and agnostics in America has hardly budged, even among the group that Burge refers to as the quote-unquote non-religious. Even the so-called great de-churching that we've been hearing about has not been a mass conversion to atheism, but rather it's an explosion of what sociologists call the nones, N-O-N-Es, people with no religion in particular. Now, making sense of this apparent contradiction requires that we rethink what it means to be secular. For example, just as rejecting religion is not the same as rejecting the supernatural, so an increased openness to the supernatural should not be equated with religious revival. New York Times columnist Ross Douthat recently suggested that the softening towards signs and wonders among college-educated Americans might simply reflect the, quote, general resilience of supernaturalism. That's not the same thing as embracing faith, Christian or otherwise. Or put differently, there's such a thing as a secular spirituality, and that may be what we're seeing more of today. Back in the middle of the 20th century, the eminent sociologist Peter Berger proposed what was called the secularization thesis. He speculated that as societies continued into this modern scientific age, religions would increasingly lose their grip on people, and the place of religion would be a secularism that, among other things, was marked by a rejection of anything supernatural. Now, decades later, Berger renounced this thesis, recognizing the resilience of religion. For example, the world had become more religious, not less, especially outside of the West. For example, Christianity is projected to number 2.7 billion adherents, or over 33% of the world's population soon, while atheism and the non-religious are declining as a percentage of the global population. Secular spirituality is far from revival. Christians know of these other forces that are capable of counterfeit miracles, but in fact lead us away from the way, the truth, and the life. And that should cause us to cry out for mercy for those who are being deceived. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Outside next, Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Variably cloudy with flurries, local lake snow. High temps in the upper teens to mid-20s, wind chills single digits and below. We'll have areas of lake snow tonight and tomorrow. Otherwise, partly cloudy, cold. Low tonight down to near 10, low 20s tomorrow. Some sunshine Friday, 20s to near 30. Snow Friday night and Saturday. Lake effect snow accumulations now through Thursday will run several inches in the favored belts southeast of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario.
All right, Kevin, it is winter after all. Thank you very much. And this is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price. Lots to talk about Wednesday, the 8th of January. California Governor Gavin Newsom declaring a state of emergency as multiple wildfires burn out of control near Los Angeles.
In neighborhood after neighborhood, there are houses burning.
Hurricane-forced Santa Ana winds fanning these flames. Fox News meteorologist Janice Dean.
Close to 100-mile-per-hour winds through those valleys and canyons into this unbelievably beautiful area, and the pictures are devastating.
These unstoppable infernos have engulfed entire communities all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Reporter Mike Rogers has the latest from Malibu.
Multiple burn patients have been walking out of the hillsides, not even driving. They have been injured, burned, and then their only resource was to walk out of the hillside, where now there is a rescue operation underway to try to treat these people.
Correspondent Tom Wade is in the thick of it in Pasadena today.
There's just a ton of embers blowing out of the building, and they okay. And you have to worry about the other buildings that could be affected by all of this debris and these embers that are blowing.
Tens of thousands in Southern California have been evacuated as those blistering winds continue to spread those fires throughout Southern California. On the other side of the U.S. of A., it is an altogether different scene. Snow and ice and brutal cold continues to grip the eastern half of the country. Reporter Priscilla Thompson.
Residents from Philly all the way down to Florida are feeling the chill, while others are digging out, braving bitter cold temps that are not letting up. D.C., New York, and Chicago all at or below freezing today.
A developing winter storm will drop snow, sleet, and freezing rain on states that are not accustomed to it. Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Cities like Little Rock, Nashville, Dallas, and Atlanta could pick up shovelable snow from this storm. The Republican-led U.S. House has passed its first piece of legislation of 2025. It's the Laken-Riley Act, and it forces federal immigration officials to detain illegals with criminal records. It's named after a Georgia nursing student who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. Less than 2 weeks before inauguration, and President-elect Trump is already making waves. He announced in a wide-ranging news conference yesterday that he will not rule out seizing control of Greenland or the Panama Canal for national security reasons.
I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. China's basically taken it over.
Trump's also vowed to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. President Biden says he could have won re-election in an exit interview with USA Today.
Based on some of the polling he's seen, President Biden tells USA Today he could have defeated Donald Trump. But when asked if he would have the vigor for a second term, he replied, quote, "Who knows what I'm going to be when I'm 86 years old," unquote. The rare sit-down interview with USA Today is expected to be his only in-depth conversation with the newspaper before leaving office. Biden said his biggest regret was failing to counter misinformation that rapidly spreads online. I'm Rory O'Neill.
The American public paying its last respects today to the nation's longest living former president. The flag-draped casket of Jimmy Carter is at the Capitol Rotunda. That's where we find correspondent Ryan Noble.
As for the national funeral service tomorrow, President Biden has declared a national day of mourning. Former President Carter's casket will leave the Capitol with a ceremony beginning at 9 a.m. The procession will then head to the Washington National Cathedral for the funeral service with a eulogy delivered by Biden. Carter's coffin will then fly back along with his family to Georgia, where a private ceremony will be held at the church in Plains. Carter will then be buried next to his wife Rosalind at their family home.
That's Ryan Nobles reporting. Entertainment news, Peter Yarrow of the famous 1960s folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary has died. The Cornell University graduate succumbed to cancer at his home in New York yesterday. Peter Yarrow was 86. There's a new study out today on coffee consumption.
Is this you in the morning? I have to get my coffee. Then you're in luck. Researchers find that people who drink coffee in the morning have a lower risk of dying from cardiovascular disease and a lower overall mortality rate compared to those quaffing multiple cups of Joe all day. Even compared to those who did not drink coffee, morning coffee drinkers were 16% less likely to die of any cause and 31% less likely to die from cardiovascular disease.
Allison Keyes reporting, and you're listening to the Noon Report for Wednesday on Family Life.
Welcome to Inside Out on Family Life. I'm Martha Manikas Foster, and I have a question. How can we take that joy that we have at Christmas, that motivation to help others that we have at Christmas, how can we take that and ride it into the new year and serve the Jesus that we celebrated coming to earth, serve him in a way that he told us to? By serving others. Well, today we're going to talk with Dr. Darren Hersick, who's worked in some of the most challenging places in the world with Compassion International, Save the Children, and Catholic Relief Services. He's had multiple roles at Liberty University, where he's now an assistant professor, and serves as the director for the Online Masters in Humanitarian Action and Human Rights. Darren's new book is titled The Last Mile in Ministry. You can call him Dr. Hersick, or you could call him Professor Hersick. But I call him the guy who used to play floor hockey in the garage with my brother. Welcome back, Darren, to Inside Out.
Thank you, Martha. The days of being able to play floor hockey.
Darren, you've seen a lot of need in your work in countries in turmoil. It's work built on Jesus' rather astonishing comment that when we serve the most in need, we're actually serving him. Why do you think God calls us to work for the betterment of people in this country and in other countries who often have different beliefs from us, different politics, different nationalities, or different citizenship?
Let me start in the beginning. God created human life distinct from all other life. And as we read in Genesis 1:27, we are created in the image of God. He created us with infinite value, inherent worth, and God has chosen to work through this prized creation to change the world. So it is this created in the image of God that made the Hebrew culture distinct from all other cultures around it, where everyone had value. There wasn't a hierarchy of value, but everyone has value. But as we move throughout Scripture, there's more than the first 27 verses. When we get into the New Testament, we all know that Jesus raises the bar. When they asked Jesus what the greatest commandment in the law was, he says, love God. But he says, love your neighbor. And then, of course, what's the example he used? He used the Good Samaritan. Right. Love is not just for those in our own family, just those that look like us or that we're familiar with or comfortable with. But he really extends it to actually the Samaritans, who were people that were despised. Right. This example of love is doing it when there's nothing in return. We just do it because we're commanded to do it. But then was the final judgment in Matthew 25. He really highlights in those verses that we're to fill our lives with care for the needs of others. And in Jesus' teachings in Matthew 25, if some of that's startling, well, I think the parallel could be terrifying. He says, truly, I say to you, as you did it not for one of the least of these, you did not do it for me. Like, wow. And I think he's laying it out that one day I'll ask you these questions. One day I'm going to be asking you at the final judgment.
Darren, God called you and your family all over the world, but we can serve right down the street, across the highway, in our classrooms. So how do we learn the needs in our own community? And when we've learned the needs, how do we find ways to serve people who have those needs?
That's a considerable part of my book, but it's also kind of my interests right now and where I'm putting my time in. I think a lot of that is because I've learned that these skills that you learn working locally are applicable wherever you are. We have to be intentional for our lives to intersect those in need. So I'm going to share two ways for listeners that maybe will do this in their own community. The first way is really identify those lives that you know that could benefit from your time and concern. It could be someone in your church. Perhaps they're no longer able to attend. Perhaps someone has lost a spouse. Perhaps it's a single mom that you know. Perhaps it's a student that's struggling. God has placed you in your community for a reason. So within that, identify who those people are. And I'm going to give you a second way. Partner with another local organization. Could be a nonprofit, could be a school. For me, Martha, the last 3 years, I've been involved in an assisted living facility. I met someone there. She said she had a need. I started with a question. how can I help? And so I play an activity, recreational activity with them. And through that, I know people's names and their stories, and I've really been able to enter into their lives. But, God opened that door, and that assisted living facility allows me a place to serve and a place to learn. You want to make sure it's both. Yes, we're serving, we're called to serve, but these opportunities present places to learn about how best to help people. But in either of these cases, whether we are identifying a need within our community or working with a local organization, I think there's one recommendation I have for listeners. You want to be able to say, I see you and you matter.
Amen. Bath, New York native and Liberty University professor Darren Hersick speaking with our own Martha Meneikis Foster on this week's Inside Out. By the way, you can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature, as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Very cold air, along with a biting breeze, will continue to be the headline as we move through the next couple days and nights. And that cold air traversing the still relatively warm lake surfaces of Lake Erie and Ontario and the upstream lakes as well will continue to mean lake snows. Then an East Coast feature will bring a general snow to the area as we head into the start of the weekend. More cold air follows. For this afternoon, variably cloudy with flurries, local lake snow. High temps in the upper teens to mid-20s, wind chills single digits and below. We'll have areas of lake snow tonight and tomorrow. Otherwise, partly cloudy and cold. Low tonight down to near 10. Low 20s tomorrow. Some sunshine Friday. 20s to near 30. Some snow Friday night and Saturday. Lake effect snow accumulations now through Thursday will run several inches in the favored belts southeast of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And finally at noon, it's almost time, folks. Girl Scout cookie season. One of my favorite seasons of the year. And a couple fan favorites are being discontinued after this year. Reporter Natalie Migliori.
After 9 years on the market, s'mores will be retired, while the final sales of Toast Jade cookies will be made after only 4 years. Girl Scouts of America says this is the first time it's warning customers that flavors are being discontinued so they can stock up before they're gone for good. All cookies will be available for sale at booths or online through local chapters across the country. Girl Scout season runs through April. I'm Natalie Migliori, New York.
All right, Natalie, thank you very much. As long as they keep those thin mints, I'm good. And that's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, January 8th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.